So over the first weekend, I was getting a little bit disappointed by the performance of some of my units, so I decided to swap some of them out. In this case, I got rid of Deedlit and Yusuke. They do have their uses, but they were just really disappointing me with missing kills a lot. So I slot in Yulia here, who is still one of the best tank busters in the game, and Old Landius, who does not bust tanks but has a lot of utility on his side. So this right here is actually the first time I'm going to be using Old Landius. My Old Landius is still 5 stars, but Old Landius is one of those characters that doesn't rely super heavily on his stars. So for this match, you can immediately see what his plan is here. Unlike a lot of other players I run into, he bans Layden pretty early, as well as getting rid of Yulia so he can pick Zerda into my team. He's definitely trying to narrow down the number of units I can use to narrow down his assassination targets. But Old Landius does have a revive on his side, so that's kind of useful. Although surprisingly he goes for some squishy units like the Lambda or Matthew. Probably scared of the AoE damage Lambda can dish out, and you probably noticed that my box is mostly protagonist, which is why I banned Matthew. But he does let me pick Chris, who is somewhat resistant to assassins and has a revive now. Although he does pick Licorice, so he has the ability to spread lots of debuffs around, so that can put a damper in that plan. So since I focused on banning his DPS as well, we both end up with a 2-healer team, but odds are he has the edge here because he has an assassin that can get past Landius and kill my squishy units. So let's see how that goes. So right from the start I decided to just move Old Landius forward. I did bring his revive, so I can maybe bait him into attacking me and hopefully I can trap him. So he pretty much accepts my challenge here, and he preps his Zerda to get ready to assassinate somebody. So even though we both went with 2-healer teams, we are both engaging each other very quickly. We're both putting up all our buffs and just going for a very straightforward fight here. So right here I attack Blessing on my Old Landius. In retrospect, this was actually a pretty big mistake on my part. I probably should have just used Attack Blessing on Landius instead, because once again I'm facing off a Hailfire Archer Zerda with these Templar Knights out front for my Landius, so there's actually a pretty good chance that Landius would be able to kill Zerda. So as expected, he runs in and tries to take out my Old Landius, and now his Zerda is wide open for me to attack. Unfortunately, Old Landius here does not seem up to the task. I guess he wasn't at full HP, but it's still pretty disappointing that he missed a kill like that. So now his Landius charges in and gets ready to finish off my Old Landius. Thankfully Crystal Warlocks are a pretty tanky soldier, so Landius can't really one-shot him like that, especially with only a buff from Sophia. I tried to respond by taking out his first Landius life, but unfortunately, as you saw, he got a Blessed Shield activation. So now he engages with Licorice. He's just vomiting those tiles all over the place, and he even gets a clock, so pretty bad situation for me here. Really, all he needs to do is to bide his time until his Zerda can pull out Bloodthirster again, and he will be able to finish off my units. And here, once again, Chris disappoints me by failing to one-shot this Zerda. It is a normal attack, and I'm using Redeemer Soldiers. This is just another good example of why using Redeemer Soldiers on Chris can just really a double-edged sword. So now that he has high stakes up, it's going to be very, very difficult for me to take out Zerda. The only real advantage I have right now is that my units are closer together. I can only try to get into a better position than he is and try to block off his units from each other, but his Zerda alone could break my formation pretty easily, so that's my biggest issue right now. And as expected, he begins to prep Bloodthirster here. Next turn he'll have a pretty easy time looking for a target to kill. I mean, he can take out Old Landius' second life at this point. He can take out Chris, possibly, depending on whether or not I have a debuff, and Liana has a chance to get one-shot by Zerda even with the Maidens up. I've seen it happen before, but most people don't go for it. And Tiaras, of course, is as squishy as always. So because I was pressuring his formation by moving my team in a little bit closer, he decides to try to guard his Zerda, and that allows me to push his Zerda back. And since I got a lucky clock, he felt the need to heal up a little bit so I don't just do the AoE again. But this leaves him open enough so that I can actually run outside of guard and block his Sophia from being able to block my Old Landius. So after I'm done healing up from his Licorice's assault, I now have a pretty clean shot at Zerda, and she busted all her own soldiers by using Bloodthirster, so this time Old Landius is going to have no trouble taking her out. Although just because I took out Zerda doesn't mean I'm out of the woods yet. This team I'm using still has kind of low offensive potential, and he could just tank his way through the entire fight and try to beat me on damage because he has an AoE character and I don't. So of course he starts trying to damage me a lot using Licorice's various AoE attacks. You can also see that his Landius punches my Landius really, really hard. Between me using Templar Knights and his stats just being way higher than mine, except for HP of course, so that means I have to actually feed him and not just sit around stalling. He did make kind of a fatal mistake earlier by moving Licorice to the left one space. This makes it pretty easy for me to just attack his Licorice for free. and even though my Landius has rather low attack, using my Landius to take out the Langrisser sorceresses, it allows my Chris to hit Langrisser herself and finish her off, because this Langrisser doesn't really have that high of magic defense. So now it's a 5v3 match, and believe it or not, he still has quite a bit of an advantage in terms of damage, so he might be able to outlast me, possibly, but of course he just stops the match. If we had kept going, it's pretty decent chance that my Old Landius would have been able to take out his Landius, at least with an Act Again on my side. So that's just another showcase of just how powerful Old Landius's push ability is.